Ah yes, Niantic have done it again, yet another tier 5 raid boss in Pokemon Go. So with that being said, what's going on trainers? TaeganAdventures here, and we're going to dive into the new tier 5 raid boss coming specially for Halloween 2019, Darkrai. Now Darkrai is a Gen 4 mythical Pokemon, and it is the second ever mythical Pokemon to appear in raids after Deoxys. So without further ado, in this video I want to discuss how to beat a Darkrai in tier 5 raids in Pokemon Go, as well as the 100% CPs and how many people you should be bringing to a Darkrai raid in Pokemon Go. So first off, let's take a look at Darkrai's stats and move pool, because that will be pretty important should you use a Darkrai in battle, or if you want to face a Darkrai, you should at least have a feel of Darkrai's stats. You can at least get a sense of what moves it can use, how tanky it is, how hard hitting it is, etc. So Darkrai has a massive base attack of 285, a decent defense stat of base 198, and a relatively low base HP of 172. And it does get a few different types of moves as well, like of course its stab, dark type moves, feint attack and snarl as quick moves, dark pulse, shadow ball and focus blast as charge moves. Those aren't really great moves, but shadow ball and focus blast can come in really handy, especially for the coverage, like in certain scenarios I'll be discussing later. Naturally, to counter a Darkrai in Pokemon Go, you want to use users of fighting, fairy and bug type attacks, because those are its weaknesses after all, being a dark type. You mainly want to use those with stab, fighting, bug or fairy type moves. So those with the fighting, the fairy or the bug types with the appropriate kinds of moves will be the best counters for a Darkrai in tier 5 raids. So in terms of your fighting type attackers, you have your standard Machamp, Hariyama and Lucario. Those are pretty much your sleeper picks in terms of fighting types. Machamp and Hariyama with counter and dynamic punch will be your top 2 counters. For a Darkrai raid, Lucario can make a good option as well, because it has a higher attack stat than Machamp, but you gotta be careful of Focus Blast, because Focus Blast is super effective on Lucario, and this is one of the scenarios where Focus Blast does come in handy because it helps counter Lucario, which is weak to Focus Blast. Be careful when sending in your Lucario in on a Darkrai. Apart from that though, Blaziken also makes a pretty dang good counter, especially with that pretty decent DPS right there, even higher than Machamp's. I wouldn't really use Blaziken myself because it has a really low TDO. It's not as tanky as Machamp or Hariyama. Your Machamps and Hariyamas will still outlast a Blaziken and deal more TDO in the long run. Honorable mentions go to Heracross, Toxicroak, and Embo with their respective movesets I'll be displaying on screen. Heracross I would recommend actually with counter and close combat. Heracross being a part bug type resists Darkrai's Focus Blast, so it is a pretty good counter overall. Only thing holding it back is that it is a region exclusive to South America, so not many people in the world will get access to a Heracross unless you have attended a Safari Zone or have traded for one. You are very unlikely to get access to a Heracross. Toxicroak is pretty good as well, if not for its defenses and its middling attack stat. Otherwise, it is pretty usable against Darkrai in tier 5 raids. Preferably you want both moves to be super effective when raiding, so yeah, counter dynamic punch Toxicroak should be pretty accessible for those avid PvP players. For Embo though, it does have a pretty decent attack stat and is pretty bulky as well, so Embo with low kick and focus blast would make a pretty decent substitute for Blaziken. Although I haven't calculated the TDO myself, I'm sure it will outlast a Blaziken. Being more tanky, it will most likely be able to deal more TDO than a Blaziken. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the DPS that Blaziken does, so it's basically a pick your poison between Blaziken and Embo. However, I would still recommend the Machamps and Hariyamas if you want to use a fighting type counter for a Darkrai raid in Pokemon Go. Now in terms of your fairy types, there are really only 2 usable fairy types in Pokemon Go as of right now, which are Togekiss and Gardevoir. Togekiss and Gardevoir have really good double fairy movesets in Charm and Dazzling Gleam. Togekiss is really bulky, especially with that high defense and HP stat, whereas Gardevoir has a higher attack stat, but it is weak to Shadow Ball from Darkrai, which in this instance is a pretty useful coverage on Darkrai's end, so be careful when sending in your Gardevoirs on a Shadow Ball Darkrai here. Granbull also gets a pretty honorable mention for having a decent attack stat with access to 2 different types of charge moves that are super effective on Darkrai, Play Rough and Close Combat. Granbull certainly has the option of a fighting type move or a fairy type move for its charge move slot. A double fairy moveset would be preferable because because after all, Gramble is a fairy type, so it will benefit from Stab, from Play Rough. Now in terms of your bug types, really the only two usable bug types are Pinsir and Scissor, with Fury Cutter X Scissor on Scissor and Bug Bite X Scissor on Pinsir. These two don't have the best bug type DPS, at least until Volcarona comes in Pokemon Go, but for now, Pinsir and Scissor are your only two usable bug types in-game right now. Now if you want the 100% CPs of a raid Darkrai, it'll be 2136 for a non-weather boosted encounter, which is any other weather apart from fog, and 2671 for a weather boosted encounter, which is in foggy weather. Of course, foggy weather boosts the power of Darkrai's dark type moves, so you would want to use your fairy and fighting type counters in that case. I would suggest you raid in cloudy weather because it boosts the fairy and fighting type moves of your fairy and fighting type counters. For the recommended group size when raiding a Darkrai in tier 5 raids, I would suggest a group size of 3 to 5 high level trainers around level 35 or higher, or 7 trainers lower than level 30 to comfortably beat a Darkrai in Pokemon Go. However, like I always say in my raid guide videos, if you need more manpower or firepower, or if you don't have the appropriate counters, or if your counters are just not powered up yet, you should definitely try to bring more people, more firepower to your raid lobby, but it's perfectly fine if you have the right amount of people you need for your raid. Now, I would love to go over Darkrai's usage in PvP as well as trainer battles, but I don't have the statistics as of right now for Darkrai since it is still yet to be released. It's a pretty new Pokemon to the meta, so if I can find a guide on perhaps how to use Darkrai effectively in raids or in trainer battles, gym battles, I'll definitely leave a link in the description. I'll also be leaving a more detailed raid guide in the description for your further reading. And of course, don't forget to stay safe, stay hydrated, be considerate to your local communities when playing Pokemon Go, when battling in a raid, when battling another trainer in PvP, etc. So as always, I'm going to be signing off right now. This has been TaeganAdventures, and I shall see you in the next video. Peace out.